As you know, I have been across the Gulf that you call Persian and they call Arabian.
Why do you call it Gulf? You have been to school, haven't you?
Yes.
What was the name that you have read during your school days?
Persian Gulf.
All right.
But they do call it Arabian Gulf.
Well, they can do many things.
Interviewed the Shah's successor only once. It was shortly after the Americans at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran had been taken hostage, and the Ayatollah Khomeini made it clear in the interview that those hostages would not be going home soon. But the question that drew his attention most palpably was this one.
Imam, President Sadat of Egypt, a devoutly religious man, a Muslim, says that what you are doing now is, quote, a disgrace to Islam. And he calls you, Imam, forgive me, his words, not mine, a lunatic.
The translator worried about even translating the question, but he did.
That's what I heard President Sadat say on American television.
Yes.
That the Imam is a disgrace to Islam,
Yes.
and he used the word a lunatic.
And the Ayatollah promptly called for the assassination of Anwar Sadat.
He forces the driver at gunpoint to stop. The assassins jump off. President Sadat is hit by 37 bullets, but it is a ricochet which delivers the fatal wound.
President Jimmy Carter had a plan for peace in the Middle East, and it's a major focus for President Obama. But as we saw with Carter, Obama might not have the best approach. Mike Evans is a Mideast analyst and author of Jimmy Carter, The Liberal Left, and World Chaos, a Carter-Obama plan that will not work. And actually, some of the foundations of Jimmy Carter's policies we're still dealing with today. First off, Mike, Jimmy Carter, a man of peace, he brought peace to the Middle East, didn't he? Anwar Sadat, Egypt and Israel aren't fighting. Shouldn't he be saluted?
Sadat was assassinated because of Jimmy Carter. He funded the Muslim Brotherhood with $500 million, and they became known as the Taliban and Al-Qaeda.
And that was Zawahiri, who was one of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood. Jimmy Carter said, makes no bones about it. He is not pro-Israeli. He is pro-Palestinian.
Right. Jimmy Carter has an ideological belief system that Obama has to understand, because if he plays that game, we're going to have hell to pay for it. He deposed the Shah of Iran.
I did criticize the president because of our undercutting of what was a stalwart ally, the Shah of Iran. And I am not at all convinced that he was that far out of line with his people, or that they wanted that to happen. The Shah had done our bidding and carried our load in the Middle East for quite some time. And I did think that it was a blot on our record that we let him down. Have things gotten better? The Shah, whatever he might have done, was building low-cost housing, had taken land away from the mullahs and was distributing it to the peasants so they could be landowners, things of that kind. But we turned it over to a maniacal fanatic who has slaughtered thousands and thousands of people, calling it executions.
He conspired through a Guadeloupe summit to overthrow the Shah of Iran. The president of France told me he was a bastard of conscience. He showed up in Guadeloupe with the French and the Germans and told us.
And next thing you know, the Ayatollah Khomeini comes over from France, takes over, and nothing's been the same in that region. But how does that relate to Barack Obama?
With terrorists and journalists. Peter Jennings was on the plane, Air France. How does it relate to Obama? Obama has an ideological worldview similar to Jimmy Carter.
Talk to Iran. Talk to our enemies.
Reason with these people. See, Jimmy Carter rejected preemption. He rejected the Nixon doctrine. By the way, he was elected on change and hope, and he ran against an unpopular president and an unpopular war. Watergate, Vietnam, Nixon.
and the funding of what would now be known as Al-Qaeda really started during the Carter years.
Listen, when Carter conspired to overthrow the Shah, and he succeeded, the Empress of Iran, Farah, told me, when he succeeded, Brezhnev said, if you do this, we will invade Afghanistan. They did. The invasion, the Shah told his wife, I fear that horror will come upon the world if he does this, because I fear that the Russians will invade Afghanistan and Saddam Hussein will invade us, and the radical Islamics will become an epidemic, and they did.
And you see a lot of similarities between the two.
Absolutely. Carter released his book on January 20th. I released mine on January 20th. My book is about 30 on Amazon. It's about 700. The reason why is these are facts. I'm not saying stuff in here I'm making up, Brian. I met with more generals, more intelligence leaders than you can imagine. You asked me, did I learn something? I learned a ton of stuff that I did not know. Why did 9/11 happen? How did it start? What created this crisis? It was Jimmy Carter's liberal left policies. But the dilemma that most people don't understand about Jimmy Carter, they say, what happened with 9/11? Why did we get into this mess? But what they don't understand, this man believed, he actually believed in these radical organizations as he does today. And he was funding Khomeini out of Paris through the CIA. He was supporting this operation through a man called Yazdi. He was getting him into power, working with the president of France, working with the German chancellor and the British. He was organizing, orchestrating a revolution that he thought was going to transform the world in Iran. It did. It did indeed.
اسلام نگفته است جنگ تا پیروزی، اگر مقصودشون این است که در قرآن این عبارت نیست درست میگن، و اگر مقصودشون این است که در این بالاتر از این با زبان خدا نیست اشتباه میکنند. قرآن میفرماید قاتلوهم حتی لا تکون فتنه، همه بشر را دعوت میکند به مقاتله برای رفع فتنه، یعنی جنگ تا رفع فتنه در عالم.
خب ما از اون امام با اون اندیشه دفاع میکنیم، با همه وجود دفاع میکنیم و معتقدیم بله اندیشه‌های انحرافی هم هست، با امام هم سازگار نبودن.
Senator Johnson, are you familiar with the EM Peace Commission's 2008 report?
And he said, if anything happens to me, I want to be buried in Egypt. Well, we are fulfilling his wish, his will. He asked for a very simple funeral, but we are going to give all due respect to this man who has stood with Egypt in its difficult moments.
President Sadat was asked whether other Muslim heads of state would now be invited to the funeral. He said no. Should those who were not ready to help the Shah in his hour of need now want to come and pay tribute, they would be politely turned away.